everyone to the first of 4 Seedlip Social Hours that we're doing. This is part 1 of mine, and I'll be doing another one in December. So for this first one, it's called Improved Lemonades, and one thing that I want to do is I want to be able to show you, of course, some of my pantry favorites as far as like Seedlip cocktails that I make for myself at home that aren't too difficult, but they are leaning more toward the NA cocktail than they did the mocktail. And that's kind of like where I want to start with everything. It's just kind of like talking about who I am, what I noticed the mocktail was, and where it has gone since then. And then also feel free to jump in with any questions or whatever. I don't have like a strict outline that I'm going to stick to. We're going to just kind of have like a chat in the beginning. And then the second half, I'm going to teach you how to make these cocktails. And you can't see the amount of things that I'm surrounded by, but I'll be talking about all of these things. So a little bit about who I am. My name is Josh Gandee. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. And I've been bartending right around 10 years now, and I've been doing 3 of those sober. So before COVID this year, I was the beverage director of a bar called Watershed Kitchen and Bar here in Columbus, Ohio. I'm currently furloughed from that position. But one thing that I felt that I did well in my position was kind of the exposure to NA cocktails in my city. And then, of course, sharing my story kind of like helped lift where those were going as well. When I first started bartending, I never really thought about cocktails that didn't have alcohol. In fact, anytime that someone would come to the bar and order something from me, it was always a bit of like a drink decoy. I feel like now we're pretty privileged as far as, you know, opening up the room to conversation and the amount of people that are willing to sit in on some of these talks and to contribute and to just sort of like open the room to kind of discuss what these levels of sobriety could be. And for me, sobriety is my whole life. I don't drink. I don't save it for the weekends or anything like that. So for me, it's I'm out of it. For some people, they could be taking the night off if they want to. They could be taking a week off. But when it comes to drinks, like it's also important for you to have something for when you're taking the round off. You know, if you want to have a foolproof cocktail and the next one, instead of just like sipping on water, you want to be able to have something good as well. And I just kind of noticed the mocktail was a distraction. It was a time when the conversation wasn't there. And if the conversation was there, it was one that felt the need to be avoided. You know, if it was, you learned that you were pregnant and you weren't ready to announce the news to your friends, it may have been too early or anything like that. Or you yourself were discovering that like, you know, I want to start dipping my toe into sobriety, or, you know, something bad had happened, but had you remove alcohol or whatever from your life altogether. And it was sort of like an uncomfortable air in the room if someone sort of like discovered that about you. So you would go up to the bar and you would order something that looked like what you always drink. Like if gin and tonic was your drink, you would order tonic water in a glass with a little bit of lime in hopes that nobody would ask you any questions or ask to taste your drink. And I think where we are now with, you know, definitely what Alex and Lauren are bringing to the forefront with Focus on Health is just like the active conversation about wellness, the active conversation about mindfulness, and, you know, what I'm able to bring to that side of it, which is, you know, the focus on sobriety, be that all the time like me or for the round like someone else. And I just wanted to get the conversation continuing about the importance of an NA cocktail program for your bar or for something at home. And for me, when I had stopped drinking, it was, you know, it was that missing of something in your hand. And so like, what was I, you know, drinking at home sort of thing. And initially it's all bubble water. It's a bulk of what I drink. But, you know, it does come to the occasion where, you know, I want to be able to make something for myself. And having something like Seedlip was really great because it fills that void on my shelf where, you know, things like aquavit and gin or vodka used to live. And I'm able to, you know, treat myself And if I'm hosting people at my home, I'm able to fit in with the party that I'm hosting, or I can bring some of the, I can bring a bottle of Seedlip to a party that's already in progress and easily jump in and make myself a cocktail to kind of fill that void that used to, only exist with like a warm liter of soda water on like a wedding table or whatever. So having those options for people to peruse, I think, is really important, because I think about the amount of times that I've gone to a bar or a restaurant and I ask the bartender to make me something without alcohol, and you can kind of tell like they're maybe at that point where I was in some of like the beginning or middle of my cocktail career, where I just wasn't really thinking about a cocktail that didn't have alcohol in it. So it kind of, was a shock. And to some people, that means giving me like the most gaudy glassware that is just like garnished like a plenty. And I just want to like grab the bartender by his collar and just be like, why did you do this to me? Like, why did you make a spectacle of the fact that like, I'm not drinking right now? And even in the beginning, when I was comfortable enough, to show back up to a bar when I wasn't drinking, because in the beginning I avoided that. And being able to show up to a place that makes me feel comfortable was very important, because in the beginning, because of how often I was surrounded by the ability to drink or to partake or to be a part of these institutions that just have it surrounding you at all times, I in the beginning kind of felt like I was doing something wrong by not drinking, because I was so surrounded by it, and because I had been on so much autopilot of just like, after shift, I'm going to sulk the same way I celebrate and go out with my coworkers and have a drink and just kind of like staple it into that place. I didn't feel comfortable in the beginning because of those like looks that I would get when I would ask for non-alcoholic cocktails, or I would be given that like garnish explosion of something. And I think for somebody who is on the fence of dipping their toe into sobriety, that sober curiosity, that taking a round off, taking a night off, taking it off altogether, they need to be made to feel comfortable. And if you give them gaudy garnished cocktails, they're not going to feel comfortable in your place. And if you take all of your NA cocktails and you shove them into a 2x2 corner in the back of your menu where the kids' drinks lives, like that's another thing that doesn't make someone feel comfortable. And if they don't feel comfortable, it makes it that much easier to backslide into the person that they are trying to grow out of. So even the smallest thing of having a well thought out NA cocktail program could essentially save someone's life by making that simple decision of, I feel comfortable in your place, you are treating me like everyone else. And that's a really big, like kind of lofty way of thinking about it. But, I kind of want to cement that importance of that toward a program. And one of the things that I did at Watershed was, in the very beginning, when I was kind of testing the waters, I didn't really see NA cocktail programs anywhere outside of like some of these like larger markets. So like, I would go to Chicago or New York and I would be able to see like these sections, but I hadn't really seen it in my city at all. So in the very beginning, I threw all of the NA cocktails toward the back. And I just wanted to see how people would approach them. And in the very beginning, I kind of saw people adding those on to like dessert orders or whatever. So like if they weren't ready for the nightcap, if they were going somewhere else, they want to kind of have that intermezzo thing. But then I saw more and more people who saw that we actually put thought and process into these drinks, that they were thrilled, because they're so used to going out to a restaurant that they don't even really like breach the subject of wanting to order something. So they immediately ask for like a soda water or a bottle of Coke or whatever, like the most simplistic version of something that's available, because they're not used to seeing options. And when I saw more and more people navigating and finding their way to that excitement level was great to see them have that. But I think more important, it was kind of like that kind of like fire that I needed to start taking it more importantly as well. And from that, I integrated it into the cocktail program as a whole. And my specific menus at my restaurant are maybe different than what you do, but I do different themed cocktail menus that come out twice a year. So they're very like expertly like put together with photographs or illustration or watercolors or whatever we do. So it's kind of like a journey from page one to the last page when you're going through it. And instead of wanting to find the NA cocktails on that last page that you may never get to, they were spliced in with the foolproof cocktails. So that way, like as you come and you want to enjoy your night, you can look for the cocktail the same way you would a foolproof. If you're in the mood for something bitter and stirred, then you'll find your NA cocktail, which is still marked that there's no alcohol in it, but you'll find it where some of those flavors live, and we do a really good job of like changing page by page, like the theme or the style of drink that you would have. That way it's easier to find. And I'm not saying that I'm doing everything right when it comes to that placement. For some people that might be a trigger to find an NA cocktail next to a foolproof cocktail. And that's something I'm always kind of like going back and forth on is, what's the best way to sort of like integrate that. And from what I found in my own experience, that's worked really well. And no one's really opened up the conversation on the other end that they've kind of had some difficulty with that. But, I don't want to claim that I know everything or that I'm the expert on that, but I'm just kind of like explaining what has worked for me. I'm happy to talk more about what sobriety means behind the bar. I'm happy to talk more about NA cocktail programs and stuff like that, but I'd like to open up if there's anybody who wants to add to that or has any questions. I'd love to hear from you. If not, I can jump into some of these cocktails that I'm going to be making. So like I said, when I would go to some of those bars and restaurants, a lot of those like gaudy garnish things that I had, where it was almost like if you thought NA, people only thought ginger beer. And I have no problem with ginger beer. I think ginger beer is delicious, but when it comes to NA cocktails, in a lot of ways, it's a crutch. So a bulk of what I had was like a tiki mug filled with lime juice and ginger beer and just like a mint explosion. So typically if I go to a place and, I trust their program or whoever's behind the bar, my go-to is just like, can you make me something without ginger beer? And more often than not, you usually, like if they don't have a program in place, what you're going to get is like an improved lemonade. And lemonade is great. There's a reason why the saying is when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. You got to make do with what you got. So if you've got fresh citrus and you've got some other things in your pantry, have fun with it. And that's what I've done. So the stuff that I'm going to be showing you today is just some stuff that like came out of my pantry. It doesn't take too much work to put together. In fact, a lot of like my favorite flavors from this just come from the fact that like I, during quarantine, got really into compost. I got really into obviously cooking every single night and trying to make the most out of what I have with me. So some of the ingredients I'm going to be showing you is I've got some cold brew coffee that's going to be part of my base. This time last year, I was in Oregon staying in a very small cabin on the coast. And it was the longest I'd ever slept in my entire life. I think I slept for 11 hours because it was after Portland Cocktail Week. And I found in their cabinet this Finchel tea, which is German fennel tea. I buy this from Amazon. And I made myself a cup and I read 3/4 of The Invisible Man, and then I fell asleep next to a fire as it went out. And since then, I've sort of like cemented how meaningful this Finchel tea is to me. So I try to incorporate it as much as possible. So I made just like so in one of the drinks, I'm going to be adding that. So I put it in just like a little jelly jar. And one thing that I will say is during quarantine and some of my like flavor tinkering, I have been less than scientific. So it's just kind of like all of my measurements are a little bit here and there. And I think like if my grandmother was still alive, she would, praise me on high for using the pinch method when it comes to a lot of stuff. So when I get to a point where I'm back behind a bar, I'm sure I'll kind of like fine tune a bunch of that stuff. But for the most part, I just kind of like want to teach you to work with what you got and you can make some really cool stuff out of that. So I'm going to grab some chilled glassware out of my freezer right there, and then I'll walk you through a couple of my favorite drinks. So the first one that I want to make you incorporates that cold brew coffee that I showed you a little bit earlier. And this one I'm actually just going to build and then give it a gentle stir. Sorry, I should have power of television this a little bit earlier. So one thing that I do for myself that's like an extra fancy treat is I keep as much glassware in my freezer as possible as like a simple little perk. But what I like to do for this is I like to do a full 1.5 ounces of cold brew coffee. You can scale back on that if you don't want to go visit the moon by all means. And then one thing that I found with cold brew is I love the Seedlip spice. And you don't need to use too much out of this, but like with sort of that kind of like natural sweetness that you get with coffee, some of those like, you know, kind of easy vanilla caramel notes that you get with that, the spice really kind of like adds a really awesome nose to it. And also has some really killer taste components. And even when you could even just drink these two together and it's really awesome. I like to add a little bit of acid to this, and that's mostly because I'm using cold brew coffee. If you're using coffee that you brewed hot and then you chill it down, you probably won't need the lemon juice or much of it because it will naturally have a little bit more acidity to it. But since I'm going to be adding bubbles to this later, I like the brightness to be up a little bit. So far I've done Seedlip spice, a little bit of cold brew coffee, and then my sweetness component is banana syrup. And this stuff on its own is infinitely chuggable. You could just do a little bit of Seedlip bubbles and banana syrup if you wanted to, but this drink adds a little bit layer of complexity. And this is super easy to make. All I did was ate a banana, and then I threw the banana peel into a container and shook it with sugar and let it sit on my counter overnight. So that's all I did. I didn't have to boil any water or anything like that. I just, you know, let the oleosaccharum do its thing, just a little bit of banana peel, a little bit of sugar, and now I can't stop making this stuff, which is good because it makes me eat a lot more bananas, which is in the long run pretty great. So far I did 1.5 ounces of the cold brew. I did 1 ounce of the Seedlip spice. This is a 1/2 ounce of that banana syrup. It's pretty concentrated, so you don't need too much of it because it's going to pack a lot of flavor. And then I just simply top this with my favorite bubble water, which is Topo Chico. And when I bring this closer to you, you'll be able to see like the way that sort of like darker banana syrup and that cold brew coffee creates like this really pretty golden hue. And it almost reminds me of like a Harry Potter butterbeer. I love that. So, you know, that's an easy one. Like I said, you don't even need if you want something like that a little bit later at night, you don't need the cold brew. You could omit that and just have a really nice like Seedlip spice, bubbles, banana syrup, a little bit of lemon juice. So then like, you know, you could play around with that stuff as well. What I usually do is like any fruit that's about to go or whatever, I'll usually just kind of like toss that sugar on it and, you know, let it do its thing overnight. And then I'll take like the mushy bits, and I've gotten into making hand pies. So I'll keep the syrup from things like blackberries, and I'll take the mushy bits and I'll make little hand pies. And then I've got a treat toward the end of the week. So I'm just kind of like doing whatever I can with what I have. I'm fortunate enough to belong to a CSA, so I pick up a box of fresh produce every single Friday, and I do my best to not waste any of that. Anything that I can goes to compost or becomes like little syrups for my drinks. So I don't make cocktails for myself every single night. So these are always just like, I try to take like at least 1 or 2 like steps a little further than I usually would when I'm making this stuff, just to kind of like highlight that importance of, you know, making time for yourself to have these drinks. But the second one that I'm going to show you uses a little bit of that Fenchel tea that I was talking about. And then we have a local jam company here in Columbus that are awesome. They are called Prospect Jam Co. So you can order that from their site if you wanted to, but if your town has like a local maker of jam or anything like that, definitely pick that up. Local, like the closer to you, the better as far as, you know, who you can help out in these times, and especially with, you know, flavor component. But I'm gonna be using a little bit of jam. This is apricot and rhubarb, which is really awesome. And it goes really good with the the Finchel, and then the Seedlip that I'm going to be using for that one is Garden, just because that is like super bright, really fresh. I really like, if you are familiar with like notes you get from Pisco and stuff like that, you get like kind of those like snap pea, like it just tastes like you're close to the ground freshness. So it's got that sort of like farmer's market kind of feeling to it. And because I'm using some jam, I'm going to be shaking this one. So the last one I built, but this one I'm going to be putting into a shaker tin. And I don't know everyone's skill level here, so I don't want to assume anything, but you know, you can use a shaker tin like what I have, or if you've got like a mason jar that seals, pretty much anything that will get like a nice tight seal that you can kind of shake around. But I'm going to be using some more fresh lemon juice because I was given lemons today. I'm going to use an ounce of this fennel tea. So I just did like a small little like jam jar. I put 1 packet of the tea in there with some room temp water, and I let it over steep. The reason I did that is this usually calls for like 5 to 8 minutes, and that's how I would enjoy it if I were just having a cup of tea. But I let it over steep because I wanted a little bit of like a bitterness complexity to come out of it. So I let it sit for like 20 minutes. So it still has that really awesome like light fennel flavor that I like from the tea, but because it sat for so long, it's got a little bit of a bitterness to it. So I use an ounce of that. And then Seedlip Garden, I do an ounce of that. And then I use a bar spoon, but if you don't have a bar spoon, luckily I'm sitting in front of my silverware, you can just use a regular little spoon as well. But you know, if you taste this and you think it could be sweeter, add another spoonful or whatever like that. You can even grab a spoonful for yourself too if you bought a really good jam like this. So good. So I'll just give this a quick shake. Lauren, I'm doing this seated. It feels so weird.
Yeah, I've been bartending sitting down for 8 months, so I'm glad you get to experience this.
So bizarre.
How much lemon juice did you add to that, Josh?
That is a ½ ounce.
Excellent.
So if you're like, man, why is that wash line so low? It's because I'm topping it with even more Topo Chico. So that was an ounce of the Seedlip Garden for that added freshness. I did an ounce of my over-steeped fennel tea. And if you could do that with other lighter teas as well. I wouldn't go with anything like chai or anything too robust. But you could even get away with like a little bit of like an English breakfast or an Earl Grey. It would do really well in the apartment. And then like a heaping bar spoonful of my rhubarb jam. Whatever you have lying around, or even if you make something. I know my mom makes a really extraordinary strawberry jam, so I'm excited to make some stuff with that the next time she gives me some. And then I topped it with a little bit of the Topo Chico. And this one you could serve over ice if you wanted to. I had a chilled coupe glass in my freezer, so I'm of course sipping it out of that.
Josh, that sounds awesome. We actually just had a new person jump in. Do you mind going over those specs for that first cocktail?
Yeah, of course. This is that first one. And this was like an improved lemonade I did with cold brew coffee. So we've got a ton of local roasters. I would hope you do too, where you live, that you can support. This one is Thunder Kiss. My friend Jason did that one. So I did an ounce and a half of that, and I built this over ice in a Collins glass. So ounce and a half of that. I used a full ounce of the Seedlip Spice because it plays really well with coffee. And I use a ½ ounce of my banana syrup, which the way that I made my banana syrup was just taking a banana peel and then throwing some sugar on it and shaking it in a quart container or mason jar, letting it sit overnight, and then straining that out. Quarter ounce of lemon juice, and then topping it with bubble water. What's great about these two is if you don't want like a long Collins drink, you don't have to top these with the bubbles. They both drink really well on their own. If you just want something like shaken and down, you can kind of up the Seedlip from like 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces as well. But these have done very well by me. They're not too acidic. They're not too sweet. when I first quit drinking, I got a sweet tooth like nobody's business, and I think the Haribo gummy bears division probably felt that in the very beginning. And since then, my sweet tooth has kind of faded a little bit, but I do like a little bit here and there. But these are less sweet than a soda, I would say. Definitely better for you, and uh, they are more meaningful to me because of like the ingredients that I got to pick. So the reason I call these some of my pantry favorites is I try to use stuff that I always have with me. I always drink that German Finchel tea. I always try to support Prospect and have their different seasonal jams on hand. I try to eat a lot of fruit and veggies, and without wasting any of that, I try to turn them into like some more complex, simple syrups and stuff like that. But everything that I picked, including the Seedlip flavors, are somewhat personal to me, and you can add those personal touches to something that you're making for yourself at home, or carry that into your program if you're developing something for your bar. And then once you have
witness to your boy killing Felix.
Cool. Any questions about these drinks? Any cocktails, sobriety, what it was like to sit down the whole time? All right. Well, if there's no questions right now, if you think of something later, you can reach out to Lauren through the Focus on Health Instagram, which I think she plugged in the chat, or you can follow me at Joshua Gandee on Instagram. I'm going to be doing one more of these. The next one that I do will be about adding bitter flavors to your NA cocktails. That's one thing that I noticed that was kind of difficult to find, is if you were ever a fan of, like, if you drank before and you were a fan of like the Negroni cocktail or something like that, it's a little more difficult to find when you remove some of those bittering agents. But there are ways to do it, and I want to teach you how to do that. I also do No Proof, which is a podcast that launched this week, and it's going to be coming out bi-weekly. You can currently listen to my episode with Michael Toscano, which can be found at fohealth.org. And my next episode that's coming out will be with Josh Harris, owner of Trick Dog in San Francisco. I'm really excited about that conversation as well. So make sure you follow us on Instagram, follow along on Facebook, check out the website. There's a lot more conversations like this that are being had, that should be had. And it's really awesome that I am a part of this platform to be able to share my voice and share my story and share my recipes. So I want to thank everyone so much for joining us, and for watching me sit down in my kitchen.
Yeah, thanks so much, Josh. It was really awesome and exciting. And this is the social hour part. So if anyone wants to stick around and hang out with us and just hang, we're gonna have the room open until 4, or until nobody's in the room. So whichever comes first. But yeah, thanks for joining us today, and it's really nice to see some of your faces, familiar and unfamiliar.
Eugene, what do you grow?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I grow lavender and curry leaf and bay leaf, just a couple of different botanicals.
Nice.
Trying to create a couple of different things that people can use. So one of the key things I've been working around is with flavor pairings. So strawberry and oregano and ginger go well together. And then if it's something like kiwi goes well with bay leaf and lemon thyme, just so that people can be able to work around, cocktails with different pairings as a guide.
Oh,
And
excellent.
something that's healthy,
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't get much of the stuff that you guys are able to use across, and that comes, I guess, because of the challenges in Africa. But then I've just tried to show people that it can be this easy or this difficult depending on how we think about cocktails, especially for the non-alcoholic sector.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think like once my frame of reference changed when I started making NA cocktails, is just I was unfortunately one of those bartenders that I would think spirit first. So if I got really excited about something, I would think only about the spirit, and then everything else that I added to it almost became like secondary. And when I removed the spirit from the component, I had a deeper understanding of all the flavors that I wanted to pick with that. And with being in Ohio, we have a lot of things available to us seasonally. We experience all 4 seasons. So, we get to play around. Some things last for 2 weeks, some things are around for a couple months, it seems. But, when I got to think more about seasonality, more about complexity, more about like the things that were meaningful to me and where they came from, I think that created a much better result when it came to the cocktail. If it's like picking up some of these jams that my friends make, or if it's like working with my CSA box, and one week I'll get blackberries and a little bit of thyme, and I'll let those things steep together, and that's my next like syrup, or that's my next cooking project, and it will find its way into a glass or on my plate. And I think you're absolutely right with showing like sense of place means a lot when it comes to these cocktail programs.
I'll be curious to figure out what you do with the Kenyan coffee.
So I like coffee as a base a lot. I think it.
Yeah.
So I use the cocktail that I showed today. Obviously, uses it with a little bit of like bubble water and some citrus. But I think you can play with coffee a lot more, and it almost takes on more of that kind of like stirred realm. I think like the Seedlip flavors, spice is one that I would choose first to pair with coffee, but it kind of fills that role of that kind of like stirred and down cocktail, where I feel like a lot of what you want to do first is like these built drinks, like what I did, or the shaken cocktail. And in the next class, I'll get more into some of that like stirred realm of stuff. But I think like coffee definitely is
I mean,
something you can work
I
with.
guess the biggest question will be probably just because coffee tastes different depending on the variety and where it comes from. So you'll find, for example, Ugandan coffee has kiwi and kumquat taste, and then you have Rwandan coffee, which is milk chocolate and almost similar to milk chocolate and dark chocolate kind of tasting. Then the Kenyan coffee is more of like red berries and lavender tasting. So, like for someone who's into coffee, how would you work out these different flavors just to kind of show the differences of coffee
I think like
in a
definitely
drink?
if you have a relationship with the coffee that you're drinking, then it helps define like what you're going to do with it. Like the cold brew that I used today is a Guji pea berry. So for me, I pick up a ton of peach notes from that. So that's why I wanted to add, adding in the banana made sense, because banana and peach was really great for me. And then kind of giving it that lightness with the citrus and the bubbles was important. But if I were doing something like with the other cocktails or the other coffees that I have in my house, like I've got a really awesome like Nicaraguan right now that drinks much more on that kind of like chocolate and mocha kind of flavor. And that's something that I would want to put more in that sort of like stirred and down realm. And I think you're definitely right. I mean, there's a broad spectrum when it comes to coffee, and I think that's even more exciting with what you want to do with it. Because you have to make those decisions. Is this something that I'm going to brew hot and then turn into a drink, or is this something that I want to do cold brew style? Or you've got all those different variants. So I think like if personally that kind of like coffee roast means something to you, then you get to decide what you want to do with it, because there's tons of different fruits and flavors that will pair with that.
Thank you so much. It was good listening to you. I mean, sometimes we actually don't get the chance to actually have this conversation, but it was good. Really good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you joined us. And I'm excited.
You're welcome.
Your herbs and all that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I was just trying to talk. I've been speaking to Lauren, and I'm hoping you guys, with post-corona, guys can come down to Africa, travel and see. What's happening down the
Hey, I
continent.
will never turn down an invitation to travel when it's safe,
Yeah.
right?
Of course.
I'm leaving this country the second I get a chance.
Waiting for you guys.
Yeah. Josh, it looks like we have a question in the chat for you. You want me to read it up? Let's see. It says, what grade Kenyan coffee are you using? Have you used any pea berry varietals?
So the Guji pea berry was the one that I use right now. I don't have any Kenyan coffee right now. That is what I use Fuji from Thunder Kiss. So that's the one that like that kind of peach flavor that I had used. And I forget what I have on deck. I have an awesome El Salvador. And here in Columbus, I pick up Thunder Kiss, or this is one line, and then they do a really great job of kind of giving you those flavor profiles up front. So lavender, vanilla, cotton candy, and guava. So even if I want to buy a coffee like specifically for cocktail making, I can kind of like just use their flavor notes or start a conversation with my barista and kind of pick up what I want to use and, you know, based on what I want to use it for.
Josh, have you ever tried using any of the fast and rapid infusion techniques to maybe infuse water to be used in cocktails? I've tried that and I haven't really gotten anything deep enough. Kind of the same thing as if I was making a fast infusion gin, trying various things, and it never always, without the alcohol, I can't seem to get it to be a really strong enough ingredient. Ever tried that?
Is that like something that you're trying to do to, replace gin? Are you trying to like replicate?
Yeah, probably tried to fill that gap, or just, I thought maybe the all the botanicals that I love from gin, maybe bring that in, to a drink another way.
That's one thing that I noticed that I love about Seedlip is it brings in a lot of those high notes that you get out of things like gin. If you are rapid infusing water, which I've done before, I do that as like a finishing move. So that's something that I would want to, you can add whatever you would want to infuse to that. And then I'll typically use like my soda stream, and that's something that I can top with. So, if I were using like one of the like Seedlip Spice or whatever, I would want to pick things that maybe already appear in that bottle, or things that I would want to pair with that, and then be able to infuse that water as a finishing move. But I agree with you. It's very difficult to want to rapid infuse that and then maybe use it as like a base alternative. And I think like for me, it's almost like the math changes when I want to do NA cocktails versus what I would do for foolproof. If I'm like recreating like a Negroni at home, it's not that simple 1-1-1 ingredient anymore. Like depending on what I'm playing with, I'm going to have to make some of those modifications. And like even with these recipes that I shared today, you notice that both of them use 1 ounce of Seedlip. And the reason for that is because it adds like a very delicate flavor to it. But more importantly, it carries a lot more of those high notes to it. So it's something that I noticed with my nose mostly, and it carries over in the taste as well. But it's not, for me, that 1-1 substitute. So that may be like part of the problem that you're running into if you're trying to replicate a base for an old cocktail recipe that you had before. You just might have to play around with like your fats with your sugar substitute and your acid with what you're doing with citrus, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to note, the thing that's really awesome about Seedlip, so Seedlip has no sugar, no alcohol. So as far as texture goes, it's very thin. So when we are talking about adding things to Seedlip, it's really important that we're adding depth and flavor, right? To heighten those aromatics, because all of the expressions are very aromatic, but they need a little help. So that's like adding egg white or aquafaba, that's adding soda water, that is adding sugar. And that really heightens those flavors. So I definitely agree with Josh, adding Seedlip is great, but then finding ways to create texture and density by adding additional ingredients.
Like rhubarb jam.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions about Seedlip? Because I am here to answer them, and I realized not a lot of people even know what it is, so I'm happy to talk about it if that's something people are interested in.
I have not tried it, so I'm glad to see to now have a couple of cocktails to go try it with. So
yeah.
So
It's really.
Are you in DC?
Outside DC in Maryland.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Sorry, Josh. Go ahead. I'll stop talking.
No, please. You know more about Seedlip than I do, and you know more about cocktails than I do. Yeah, so, I think we make a good team on this Zoom room. But as far as like replicating old recipes, the one that I do pretty much do like 1-to-1 substitute is I love Seedlip Garden and Castle Vetrano olive brine, and I do
That
like,
sounds so good.
and it's a martini, and you know, the fact that I'm at home is I can eat as many of the olives as I want to without anybody slapping my hand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Oh my gosh, that sounds great because I had both those things.
Oh, you got to do it.
I
Even like if you,
love.
I always have chili oil at home too. So Casa Vetrano, like fake martini with a little bit of chili oil on top, so good.
Yeah. Somebody just asked a question about a Seedlip and if we have like a hot cellar. So the way that I kind of like to talk about the product is that where with spirits we're very focused on category. So you know, your whiskeys, your rums, your gins, we can kind of categorize them as far as what the flavor might be because there are many similarities. With Seedlip, we really like to focus on flavor, which is kind of piggybacking what Josh was saying earlier. So when we're working with the different expressions we have, and we have three, Garden 108 is our herbal expression, and it really is focusing on English peas, hay, rosemary, thyme, and spearmint. So incorporating things that heighten those flavors is important, right? Grove 42 is our citrus expression, and we have bitter oranges. So bitter oranges and blood orange, we're really focusing on the peels there. Mandarin orange, as well as lemongrass, ginger, lemon, and then Szechuan peppercorn, which is an endothermic pepper. So instead of getting that really spicy note you would from a pepper, you actually have this cooling effect that occurs. So we have complexity and flavor there, which is really nice. And then lastly, our Spice 94, or aromatic, very much focused on spice. So your allspice berries, cardamom pods, American oak, casserole bark, lemon peel, grapefruit peel. So very, very different looking at all three expressions. But when you think about flavor, yes, there are some comparisons as far as, you know, the spice maybe being like what you would use for your more barrel aged non-alcoholic variations, but I would not categorize them as like, this is the gin, this is the whiskey, because focusing on the flavor is really the goal here. Additionally, when we're talking about Seedlip, there is very much an environmental side of the conversation, which is, you know, how do we think sustainably? How do we reuse ingredients? You know, with integrating local ingredients like coffee and jam is a really great way to increase the complexity with these beverages, but also to make beverages that are rather easy to make in our homes and at our bars that still excite our guests. Additionally, thinking like this, the same way we make our alcoholic beverages in our bars, we want to treat our non-alcoholic beverages the same way. We don't want to go to a table and have a guest looking at a drink like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. And then someone asks for the same drink as a non-alcoholic variation and they're like, not as excited about it, right? So I think when we approach non-alcoholic beverages the same way we approach everything else, it really does still provide people with an amazing experience, and that is what we do at the end of the day. Especially now during these times, I think for the folks that are willing to come out, we want to still wow them and provide them with amazing experiences. So I think this is a really great way to do it. And I see a puppy and I'm so distracted, so I'm so sorry. I'm going to stop talking and acknowledge the puppy.
To add to the, so.
Yeah, any other questions, or anyone want to introduce themselves, where they're from?
I'm Jeannie. Hi, I'm Jeannie. I'm not actually a bartender. I'm an enthusiast. We went to bartending school, but I never did get a job in bartending. So I'm more of an enthusiast that now, through health reasons, can't drink as much as I used to, which makes this very relevant to me.
Yeah, well, happy to have you here. Thanks for coming.
What are some of the things that you've made for yourself that you're excited about?
I did. Said I went through the route of trying the replacement spirits that did nothing for me. The ones that are trying to mimic, you know, bourbon. I'm a bourbon drinker and gin drinker. So probably the things that have excited me most are just pretty much just seltzer waters and bitters. I have a whole shelf full of different kinds of bitters, and I'll try different bitters in a beautiful glass with a little seltzer water. Or I found some low alcohol wines that 5% alcohol wines that are way too sweet. So so then I found it's actually a hard seltzer that I mix with it to bring down that sweetness and still keep it at 5%. So I get a little bit of alcohol. But I'm still searching for things that will excite me in terms of cocktails, because I still love my cocktails. So this is really helpful to try some of the recipes that you showed us.
Oh, nice. And on my Instagram page as well, I have a highlight of my NA picks. So if I ever come across anything that was really exciting for me or whatever, I'll always share that there and keep it updated. Hi, Laura.
Hi. So my name's Laura. I live in Columbus and I actually worked with Josh over at Harvest for a while. So I consistently bug him randomly with questions. I am not a bartender. I actually am a psych nurse practitioner. So I'm always on the hunt for different things I can suggest. And I like to have balance in life because it's easy, especially during the pandemic, to turn to the easy liquor cabinet. And I like to have things on hand that are not. And I've been telling Josh, I love Shrub. And it was really cool because I actually got into it and then told one of my girlfriends, because I got married this year and we had it at the wedding. And she introduced her sister to it, and her sister and her husband are going sober. So they've been doing a ton of Shrubs at their house and mixing it with club soda as a non-alcoholic cocktail. So I thought that was really cool that it is sort of this culture of mocktails that has good flavor depth and profile is still catching on.
Oh, yeah, it's really exciting, and especially with these syrups that I'm making with just throwing what could be garbage to some people in with some sugar, getting some really great results from it. A Shrub is another one of those as well. So I my fridge is pretty stocked with different ones. So, playing around with whatever vinegars you want to add, whatever types of sugar, whatever types of more vegetal or kind of fruit stuff that you want to do. But if you live in somewhere where your choices change throughout the year, then if I had some peaches over the summer that I loved, a Shrub is also a really great way for me to kind of preserve that moment in time. And then in the depths of February Ohio winter, I can pull that out and kind of remember the better times.
Amen. I'm really curious with the Seedlip, because I have watched you guys. I sound like a crazy person, but I've been watching you guys for a long time. And I feel like you were the very first non-alcoholic liquor that I really paid attention to, because I appreciated that it wasn't trying to mimic, but rather take on its own, like you said, the flavor structure and profile. But I still haven't bit the bullet and bought one, because I just was well, I don't know if I know enough to utilize how complex I think the creativity is with it. So this was really helpful.
No, that's great to know. And we were actually the first non-alcoholic distilled spirit. And the reason that we call it a spirit is because it is distilled, and water and alcohol boil at different temperatures. So not to bore you with the science, but essentially through temperature, they're able to extract the alcohol. But I think it'd be really great, if you are able to purchase a bottle. We'll post the recipes up ahead of time next time so that you can join along. I think that'd be really fun.
Great. I love that.
Yeah, and I'll be sure that gets sent out as you all register, so that you have that information, because I think it'd be fun to have it be more interactive.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
so we can
thanks
go
for coming.
out, eat a banana and make some syrup the day before.
Oh, so great. Yeah, banana peels are amazing, and they're so versatile. I think they're intimidating, but I love that Josh used it that way. And we both know someone who makes banana tea. Amy Ward. And it's pretty interesting what you can do with bananas. So don't throw those peels away. Let's see, Allison just wrote something. I usually use NA cocktails to balance my cost per cocktail. Is it cost effective to switch to Seedlip, or is it just more useful? as adding to the menu. I think it is cost effective. Depending on your region, it's priced differently, and I can definitely chat with you about that. But I think that's a great idea. As you would, your higher end, maybe Caribbean rum with a different rum, just to add that complexity, but bring your costs down. So I think it's a really great approach. Additionally, then we get into that low ABV category, which is another really great way to obviously utilize Seedlip for those who are just looking to drink a little bit more mindfully.
It also gives you a really great opportunity, with some of the stuff that I showed today with like that banana syrup of using more of what you have available. You kind of use like your husks or whatever after juicing and create syrups, and that can kind of like give you that play, especially like cost per item with your NA spread as well, because you're working with like the fruits and vegetables that you have available to kind of like build that base. And like I said, with the drinks that I include, like I only use around an ounce. Sometimes I'll use more, but it keeps it more cost effective that way, because I'm using less, because I'm not doing that 1-1 switch for spirit placement. But I think like even leading with kind of that sense of sustainability helps sell the cocktail itself, and then also helps keep costs down.
Yeah, so it looks like we're getting ready to wrap up, but wanted to see if anyone else had questions or wanted to introduce themselves, because we like to talk. And I noticed we have a few more peeps in here. Anyone? No pressure. It's all right. I can just talk for a few more minutes.
Allison, I know you're not, but it looks like you're on a plane.
Wait, who looks? Me? Oh, Allison. Yeah. I was like, no, I'm not on a plane. So funny. All right, well, I really appreciate y'all coming out today, and I probably can speak for Josh as well. It's been a really, really fun time, and we're looking forward to doing this more. We have 3 more sessions occurring in 2020, hopefully many more to come in 2021. As I said earlier, we'll be sure to post recipes earlier so that you can all make some beverages along with us. And if you have questions, you can follow us at fohealth.org. On Instagram at fohealth. Josh is Joshua Gandee, right? At Joshua Gandee. Am I right? Yay, look at that. And yeah, feel free to follow along. Josh is always posting some really great non-alcoholic beverages. So if you need some inspiration, definitely go there. But until next time, we will see you all very soon. And this will be posted on our website in case you'd like to reference it later.
Thank you guys.
All right, thanks.
I'll take you
Thank
up on that.
you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.